Now, Job says, I was at ease, but he hath broken me asunder. He hath also taken me by my neck, and shaken me to pieces, and set me up for his mark. God has done this to me. He's permitted this to happen to me. Have you ever seen a dog pick up a rabbit or an animal by the nape of the neck and shake it? I've seen that many a time as a boy when I'd go hunting. When the dog would catch a rabbit, he'd shake him, by grabbing him by the neck. And Job apparently had seen that. Job says, God has just let that happen to me like that. He's shaken me. And he does that sometimes, friends. He says his archers compass me round about. He cleaveth my reins asunder, and doth not spare. He poureth out my gall upon the ground. Now, gall is bitter. And that's what he's saying. Oh, my bitterness is just poured out of me. He breaketh me with breach upon breach. He runneth upon me like a giant. He says that he's just been walking up and down upon me. He's made me a doormat, as it were. You couldn't have anything more vivid than this here. The language of the book of Job is something that great men of the past, especially writers of the past, novelists and poets and essayists, have read the book of Job again and again. Its language is superb. And I would recommend it to many of you today, that it would become a part of you. Just read again and again the book of Job. The beauty of the language here is wonderful. Now, he says, I have sewed, I'm reading verse 15, sackcloth upon my skin, and defile my horn in the dust. My face is foul with weeping, and on my eyelids is the shadow of death. Have you noticed how close Job was to death? He wished for it, and yet avoided it, and yet stood right on the threshold of death during all of this time. I think he felt that any moment that he might die of what had taken hold of him, what had happened to him. He's a sick man, and a very sick man. Now, will you listen to it? He says, not for any injustice in mine hands, also my prayer is pure. Now it's beginning to come out, the thing that is in the heart and life of Job that needed to be dealt with. And I think probably I should suggest it again. I've suggested it before. You see, these friends have not been leading him to a place where he would judge himself. They actually ministered to a spirit of self-vindication. They put him on the defense. And the minute that he defended himself, he had to put God at a disadvantage. You know, you can't defend yourself and at the same time defend God. That's impossible to do. So many people think that if they justify themselves, that's all they need do. Well, Job justified himself instead of justifying God. And they condemned Job instead of leading him to condemn himself. That is the approach they should have made to him. And you know that the minute you begin to defend yourself, you get in the position which John very candidly says, if we say that we're without sins, we make God a liar. And that's what you do. You put God, you see, in the place of being blamed. You take him off of the position of being the judge, and you put him down as the one that is charged, the guilty one, the criminal, the one that you're bringing a charge against. And there's so many people sit in judgment on God. And that's what Job actually is doing. And he's justifying himself here, you see, why he says, not for any injustice in mine hands. And the minute he said that, he's saying God's wrong in letting this happen to me. And he says, my prayer's pure. And my, how I've heard that too, also coming from Christians. I doubt whether any of us pray a pure prayer. And that's the reason I always tell the Lord, I'm asking this in Jesus' name, because I don't think Vernon McGee would get through, my friend. I don't know about you. Job thought he would get